What's up, everybody? Mailbag time. Today, we're going to talk about who could be the next coach for the Washington Wizards. What truly is a ceiling for Bilal Coulibaly, and which Wizards are going to be here next year, and do we get to 20 wins? We're going to talk about that and more next on Locked On Wizards.
You are Locked On Wizards, your daily Washington Wizards podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's good, everybody? It's your boy Brandon Scott again with my guy, the real Ed Oliver. And we both appreciate you guys making the Locked On Wizards your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. And tonight's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Oh, visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. So in mailbag time, we you guys ask and we shall answer. What is the ceiling for Bilal Coulibaly? Who could be the next coach of the Washington Wizards? And who's going to be here next year? And do we reach 20 wins? So we're going to answer those questions. So let's get into the first one, E. And these 3 questions are off of X, aka Twitter. So the first question is from Mr. Mac Daddy Puff Puff at Original Wizard. and they asked, who should be the next coach of the Washington Wizards? So E, a lot of candidates out there, but I guess we'll drop it down. Who would be your top 3 options at head coach next year for the Washington Wizards?
Oh, that's a good question, but that's an interesting name there for sure by Mac Puff Puff. But for me, I really like Kenny Atkinson, man. I like him a lot. He's a guy that coached a Brooklyn team to make the playoffs. Where I'm not gonna say they were the most talented team, but they weren't a talented team, but they didn't have a lot of superstars on that team. And that team was able to make the playoffs. And looking at their record, they were 42-40. And then I thought he was wrongly let go by the players who came there, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving. They wanted to bring in Steve Nash. And I thought Kenny Atkinson did a really, really good job that year. And just looking at that roster, they had D'Angelo. They finished 6th in the NBA in the Eastern Conference. They had D'Angelo Russell was on the team. Of course, a guy that, didn't work out here in D.C., but Spencer Dinwiddie, Jared Dudley was on the team. Jared Allen was on the team. That was when Jared Allen was starting to play really, really well. Kenneth Faried was on the team. Joe Harris was a great shooter. Rondae Hollis-Jefferson was a good defender. Karis LeVert. So they just had some good guys. Shabazz Napier was on the team. So I'm just naming that roster, and nobody is really an all-star. Nobody's really a superstar on that team, and they were 6th in the Eastern Conference. At that time, I don't think the plan was around. But basically, my point is that, he was able to do more with less. And we don't see a lot of coaches that are able to do that these days. Of course, Mike Budenholzer is a guy that's able to do more with less. You see not just his time with the Bucks, but his time with the Hawks, when they had Jeff Teague, DeMarre Carroll, Al Horford, Kyle Korver. Once again, all those guys didn't make all-star teams, but they weren't superstars. Of course, they kept losing to LeBron because, he was a superstar, Chris Bosh, D. Wade, but those teams were actually more of real teams, teams that play together and had good chemistry, had to defend, had to share the ball with each other, had to, work well within the system. And then, of course, with Giannis, of course, it didn't end well, but they won a championship. This is a guy that just recently won a championship and gets fired. Giannis fires another coach over there. Now they got Doc Rivers over there. We don't know how long Doc Rivers is going to last. So Mike Budenholzer has a legitimate resume where he's shown success with multiple teams in the Eastern Conference. My third candidate, just looking around, and of course Brian Keefe is in consideration. You got to consider him, but you got to do your due diligence. I think it would be, it wouldn't be right. They wouldn't do right by themselves. Will Dawkins, Michael Winger, and Travis Schlenk, they wouldn't do right by themselves if they don't do a legitimate search and interview at least 10 guys. I love Sam Cassell. I think he would have been great with Bradley Beal, but they hired Wes Unseld Jr. Kenny Atkinson, Budenholzer, and then there's an assistant coach on the Miami Heat, Chris Quinn, and he's a guy that I really, really am intrigued by. Under Eric Spoelstra, you just kind of look at, and this is just going off of their culture and what they've done. and Chris Quinn has been with Eric Spoelstra for years, and that's another example of getting the best out of guys. I mean, they have undrafted guys like Duncan Robinson, Gabe Vincent, Caleb Martin played really well for them. So they've been able to make the best out of guys that are not top 5 picks, top 10 picks, or all-star guys. They get the best out of their guys, and guys come in undrafted G League program, just getting better every year. So I just like the developmental aspect coming out of the Heat, and just seeing how they develop players and guys have gotten better. So my picks are based on what you're able to do with guys. Yeah. Are you able to get the best out of guys? Are you able to do more with less? Because, this situation, are they guys that can fit into a rebuild where you're not going to go off and get Budenholzer, he may not want to come into a rebuilding situation. That's the only thing with me. He may want to, because Doc Rivers, you see every team he goes, that team has a bunch of all-stars. Doc Rivers never, ever, ever goes to a team where it's a team that has to rebuild or improve. So you got to get a guy who's willing to come here and willing to come into a situation where you have to improve and rebuild. You're coming from a team that's not going to get 20 wins this year. Is going to have a top 5, top 6 pick in the draft. So you got to look at it that way. Of course, there's other guys like that. There's no way in the world we're going to sign them or hire them, but like Mike D'Antoni, Mark Jackson, just retreads, guys like that. But my 3 realistic candidates for me is Kenny Atkinson, Chris Quinn, and then I don't know how realistic Sam Cassell is, but I'm very intrigued in Sam Cassell. I think he's a leader of men. I think he's a guy that definitely would fit DC culture. He's a guy that I want to see have a chance. So, and then Keith, I would give him a chance. Of course, give him an interview. I think he's done some good things here, but I think you definitely have to look around for candidates that are outside of the building for sure.
Oh yeah, I echo and piggyback pretty much all you said, man. Me personally, these 3 are my personal preferences, and things I'm kind of looking for is, obviously culture, but how do players respond to you? I definitely want a coach who is a dog, in my opinion. I want a guy who's going to dig in the players. I want a guy who's going to set a standard, hold that standard, and to keep guys by that standard. Number one, I'm going to start with Chief Keef, man. Number one, I think that he, at the very least, he's earned an interview, because if you look at how these guys responded to him, and yes, we have ways to go to we're a better rebounding team, a better defensive team, but those areas got better when he became the interim head coach, as opposed to Wesley Snell Jr., where we were probably one of the worst, if not the worst, rebounding team, worst defensive team. He got guys to put more effort on the defensive side. The ball movement was more fluid, so they definitely responded to him. So at the very least, he definitely, in my opinion, he's earned an interview at the very least. Number 2, Mike Budenholzer, I'm with you. What he did in Atlanta, what he did in Milwaukee. Like you said, would he want to be in a rebuild? I'll say this, man, money talks. I mean, depending on how much zeros are on that paycheck, the higher the number, the more likely he wants to be in a rebuild. So maybe they aim high, maybe they throw some money at him, because like you said, his track record speaks for itself. I do believe we do have a nice foundation of young players here. And obviously we're in a rebuild, but look, we have the scoutings in place, the offices in place, put all the right things in place. And I think that with the right coach, we could definitely be cooking with hot grease, man. Number 3, Juwan Howard, former Bullet, former Wizard, former University of Michigan coach. He's got some dog to him. He's got ties to the organization. He's got ties to the city. I mean, he's a guy who's going to come in. He's going to fight for his players. I think it's me personally, but I think if you look, you don't really want to go off a link to the organization, because Wesley Snell Jr. had a link to the organization, and ultimately we saw what happened with that. So you don't want to rely on a link to the organization, but Juwan Howard has showed that he could be that dog. And I think he's a coach where I think players will feed off his energy, in my opinion. When your coach is out there being a dog, getting into it, man, you're going to feed off that, in my opinion. And, you got a couple of former Wolverines on the roster, Jordan Poole. It's not even Isaiah Livers anymore because he's gone. So one former Wolverine on the roster. But I think Juwan Howard would be my choice. I think he'll, because the ties to the organization, and he's a coach who, again, is going to hold a standard. And I think that with a young roster, solidifying culture and solidifying that culture and holding that, or solidifying a standard and holding that standard is very, very key early on in a rebuild. So that would be my 3. Like I said, there's a lot of good candidates. I mean, Sam Cassell would be a good candidate. Kenny Atkinson, like you said, good candidate. Mike D'Antoni, man, I don't think that's realistic, because and looking at coaches that want to come in and right away with when Doc Rivers. A lot of people say that he comes in, it just happens to coach the team is already ready to win, kind of like Phil Jackson. So I think that those three would be perfect candidates. So, in my opinion, Juwan Howard would get the most out of his roster, in my opinion. So we're going to look forward real quick. We're going to talk about Bilal Coulibaly next. What is his ceiling, E? And what can you expect for him to improve upon next year? And we're going to look beyond next year. And can we get to 20 wins? And how many players who currently on the roster are still going to be here next year? So we will talk about that and more. But before we do, tonight's episode is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. So there are three great options in the Rogue, the Pathfinder, and Armada. I'm going to roll with the 2024 Nissan Rogue. Because why? It's perfect for city drives and great escapes. Class exclusive Google built-in is your always updating assistant to call on almost anything. Gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, and Google Play Store are built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system. See what I did there? The 2024 Rogue is the perfect mid-size crossover for your next big adventure. So take the Nissan Rogue, the Nissan Pathfinder, or the Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Are you watching Fox Sports ESPN on your TV all day long? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? I know I do. Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for your every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you the can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news. Streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. So this next question, E, is coming off, again, X, a.k.a. Twitter. And let's get to it. It is from Omri Wallach, at O Wallach. And the question is, what is Bilal's ceiling? And which active player would you compare him to?
Good question. And then there's a couple coaches that I wanted to name too. I know it was three, but just to take a look, to keep an eye on, because this is not always going to be the sexy name or the most popular name like Mark Jackson and Mike D'Antoni, and especially with the Wizards. It's definitely going to be some guys that people have never heard of. Now, people may have heard of these names. Jordi Fernandez from the Sacramento Kings.
Oh, yeah.
The Kings have played really good ball. They made the playoffs last year. They're going to make the playoffs again. Mike Brown has been a good head coach under them as well. Jordi Fernandez, he coached Team Canada in the FIBA World Cup, and they did a good job. They had Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They had Dylan Brooks. They had RJ Barrett was on that team. I want to say Olenek might have played on that team too. So they had a lot of NBA players on that Canadian FIBA team, and I want to say Canada beat USA in the FIBA World Cup this past season. I got to do my research and make sure on that. But he also was 62-38 as the head coach of the Canton Charge in the G League. So there's some low key guys definitely to take a look at. And as we go through this process, of course, we'll have some more names to throw out there and stuff like that. Just see who we're interviewing. Of course, Terry Stotts is a guy. He's a retread from the Blazers who coached Dame Lillard. They made it to the Western Conference Finals. So I'm not going to say I'm high or low on him, but that's just somebody to think about. But and you see the Hornets. Steve Clifford got fired in the middle of the season. Jacques Vaughn got fired in the middle of the season. I'm not advocating for those guys, but those are some of the teams we're going to be competing with as far as coaching candidates. Those are some vacancies right there. Looking at some article, they're talking about Charles Lee from the Celtics. Of course, he's coming from a winning organization. With Ime Udoka, who's not there anymore, and then Joe Mazzulla. So he comes from a winning organization. And then Kevin Young, he's with the Suns. He's an associate head coach. Chris Quinn, I brought him up from the Miami Heat. Like I said, just the culture. David Adelman with the Nuggets. Even though we got a guy from the Nuggets before, Wes Unseld Jr. didn't work out. Maybe if they take a chance on this guy, David Adelman, it may go differently. So we'll see how that goes. And then Sean Sweeney from the Mavericks, and then the article also has David Vanderpool. So don't sleep on Vanderpool either. I guess he's in the running too. They probably will give him a chance. They brought him over here for a reason. They brought both him, Keith and Vanderpool, over here for a reason. They kind of knew they were going to move on from Wes Unseld Jr., so that's a big reason why they brought these guys over here too. So just some other names to throw out there. But to get back to Bilal, his ceiling, man, it's that's a good question because I don't want to put a ceiling on him right now. It's so early. But I know a lot of the consensus and draft experts and scouts compared him to OG Anunoby. They compared him to Mikal Bridges. They compared him to Matisse Thybulle because Thybulle was such a good defender with the Sixers, and he's still a really good defender as well. Athletic, he's improving his shooting. And then I think the lowest comparison that we saw was Derrick Jones Jr., who's just an athlete, dunk contest kind of guy. He's not going to really give you much else. He's playing okay with the Mavericks. He's more of a role player, though. But I will hope for Bilal to be more than a role player. But just looking at his rookie year, I thought he did some really good things. The ball handling, I thought he showed improvement. Shooting, he shot better than what I thought. Defense was great. Blocking shots, chase down blocks, glassing guys, rebounded really well. Had a couple double-doubles, put back dunks, dunking on people. He was not scared to pick up full court. He wasn't scared to guard point guards. He wasn't scared to guard bigs. So he did it all defensively. He really did guard 1 through 5 at some points. So I love that. But, of course, the things that he obviously needs to work on is shooting, ball handling, those things that I named that he did a good job on. He still has a long way to go with those things. As far as in-between game, pull-up jumpers, counter moves, different things like that. But the confidence is there. It did go away a little bit. He did hit that rookie wall. Kind of, with West, they kind of stacked him in a corner, as a spot-up shooter, which is not good. But some of it was on him, too. He did need to be a little bit more aggressive and more confident in his shot, too. So it wasn't just the coaching. Some of it was on him just being a rookie in that rookie wall. But I thought for the most part, he did a lot of good things. But to answer the ceiling, yeah, I could definitely see OG Anunoby. I could see Mikal if he works on that 3. There's a lot of guys I could see. And then, of course, best, wishful thinking case scenario is Giannis. Of course, a lot of people said that. I haven't said that, but I do see where they're coming from when they see it because Giannis came in, lean. I'm not going to say just skinny, but he came in lean where he needed to get in the weight room and just get stronger. Giannis did that, got on a diet, got on a weight program. Can they do that successfully here with Bilal? We'll see it. I want him to live in a weight room, get on that diet, get on that weight program for sure. And we'll see, so I'm not gonna put the pressure on him to say Giannis, but I could definitely see OG. I could definitely see Mikal. I could definitely see him working out to be those guys. But he's got to work on his 3-point shot to be at Mikal's level because Mikal really worked on that. But those are some comparisons to say his ceiling. But I like what I see from him. But I do want to wait and see to really give him a ceiling right now. But I see the potential, and I thought he did a lot of good things. And he definitely deserved to be in a Rising Stars game. We'll see if he makes all rookie team, like the second team. I could definitely see him making that second team. I wouldn't be surprised if he made it. I do think he deserves some votes for sure. But like I said, he had a rookie wall. He hit a rookie wall at times, just like any other rookie. But I could see him anywhere between those guys.
Yeah, I'm with you. I like the comparisons. The ones I like is OG. I think he definitely compares to OG Anunoby a lot. His ceiling, like you said, is I don't want to give him a ceiling yet because I don't want to put any unneeded pressure on the young guy, man. But his defense is there. He's still growing. He's very, very young, and he's very, very raw. And people forget that Giannis, man. I think that also is a really good comparison. People forget how raw Giannis Antetokounmpo was coming into the league. Very, very, very raw as a player, man. And even now, there's still parts of his offensive game, especially shooting, that he's still working on. So he's it's hard to really call a guy who got an MVP and Defensive Player of the Year award a guy who's still developing. But in certain ways, Giannis is still developing his offensive game. So people forget how raw he was coming to the league. But like I said, Bilal, you see the potential. You see the fact that defensively, he's already there. He's got the instincts to be a lockdown defender. He's got the defensive instincts. He's got the dog in him. He wants to get better. You see the work ethic. So I could definitely see him right now. I don't want to say star. Yeah, I want to say he's definitely, in my opinion, his ceiling right now is definitely an above average starter. He's a guy who's going to, when it's all said and done, his offense is going to be something to deal with. It's going to be a threat, but it's going to take some work, because it's very, very raw offensively. And while I will say that his offensive game is a little more polished than I was expecting, don't get it twisted. As far as dribbling, he still has a high dribble. Putting the ball on the floor, definitely needs to work a lot more on that. Shooting, definitely, faster release, and stuff like that. So, but I like the potential of Bilal. And like I said, going forward, I love the young foundation we have. Corey Kispert, Denny Avia. Bilal Coulibaly, Jordan Poole. We have a good young foundation, and we combine that with, he's got Kyle Kuzma on a very team-friendly deal. So, I like the foundation going forward. And Bilal has a lot to do with that, man. Bilal Coulibaly, man, is just, he's still growing. And like I said, and when it's all said and done, he very well could be 6'10". He is still growing. He's got a 7'3" wingspan right now. I mean, the kid is still growing, and I think he's definitely gonna be a force, but it's going to take a lot of development, and you definitely have to have the right pieces in place for him to be properly developed. And if he is properly developed, he's definitely going to be an above-average guy who could develop into a star in DC, in my opinion. So, yeah, I'm very high on Bilal, man. It's very unfortunate he went down with an injury, but I'm definitely very intrigued to see what kind of work he puts in the offseason and see if he can take it, the next step in his development next year. So.
Right, yeah, and then looking at the numbers where he finished with 8 points a game, 4 boards a game, which is solid, almost 2 assists, almost a block, almost a steal. 70% from the free throw line, needs to improve on that. 50% from the field, which is fine, and 34% from three, which is pretty good. That's not bad at all. That's pretty solid, all for three attempts a game. So I thought he did a really good job of that. 43% from the field. Played in 63 games, 15 starts. We didn't have a lot of bigs out there. There were times where, he had to play as a big man. I'm just looking at some of the play-by-play. So yeah, power. Yeah, for the most part, he's playing a small forward, shooting guard 48% of the time, 1% at power forward. Didn't play a center at all, and 1% at the point guard position. So, seeing him if he can, kind of lead an offense like he was in the summer league, and that's something I want to see. I do want him to play in the summer league again because I know they kind of been a little iffy with that, with our guys playing in the summer league. But I think he needs to play in the summer league again. Maybe just 2 or 3 games. He doesn't have to play the whole summer league, but maybe just 2 games just to work on his game. I do want to see him as a lead ball handler, not as necessarily as a point guard, but just a lead ball handler, kind of just initiating the offense. I thought he did some of that in the summer league really well at times, and I thought he did some of that was solid at that sometimes during the game. So that's something I want to see him work on in the off season for sure. But yeah, like you brought up, he did a couple good things for sure. So there was one stat that I was looking up too. I can't find it, but it was like him and Wemby were in a threshold stat where it was like 50% or something like that. I gotta find it. I'll probably find it later on. But yeah, as a Wizards rookie, he's done some good things because we've seen a lot of rookies come in here and struggle. So yeah, he was the only rookie this season with at least 40 blocks, 50 steals, and 63 pointers made. That was him and his teammate Wemby were the only 2 rookies this year to do that. So that's an awesome, awesome number to see from Bilal.
Absolutely. And I tell you something, man, he's definitely has high level of potential, man. So like I said, I'm definitely very intrigued to see how he takes a step forward next year, man. Because like I said, the kid, he's got the intangibles, man. So we're gonna get into the last question of the day. Can the Wizards win 20 games next year? And if so, what players are still on the roster that are currently on it now? But before we do, my man, he's gonna talk to us about FanDuel. Yes,
sir. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA, NHL, baseballs in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all in an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
Absolutely. So let's get to his last question, and this is from Stephen Powers at DC Stones 1978. And the question is, will 20 wins be an accomplishment next year? And how many of the current players do you expect will be here 1 year from now at the close of the 2024-25 season? What do you think, E?
Okay, so Steven said, will 20 wins be an accomplishment?
Yeah, I guess what he's asking is, can we reach 20 wins? Is that a realistic goal?
Yeah, it's unfortunate. That's where we are right now. 20 wins is the goal. I mean, that's really, really low. The bar is super, super low. So, I mean, excuse me. Just had to drink some H2O. But no, I understand what Steve was asking. I do. 20 wins. Right now, we are what? How many wins do we have? 15 wins or something like that? It's like our worst record in franchise history or something like that.
Oh, Lord, let me check
as well.
We are at 15 and 65.
Yeah, 15 and 65. So, there's 2 games left. So, the best they can do is 17. Yeah, I would say the under. I think the over-under was 25, and a lot of people were saying that we were going to be over. And it's going to be funny to look back at a lot of things that were said before the season, because I remember there was an article that came out like how watchable would the Wizards would be.
Yeah.
And we came in dead last on the League Pass, like the League Pass preview or whatever. And a lot of people were upset about it. And basically, we came out as the worst team. And then the over-under for 24, a lot of people said under. A lot of people disagreed on that. And we clearly went under. So I would take the under. I would take the under on 20 wins next year as well, because I don't, we'll see what they do with the center position. If they do what they did again, where I think they may draft Alisar, they may not. We'll see.
Yeah.
But I still think they're going to be in development mode. They're still going to be in draft mode. They're still going to be in getting the best pick mode. And next year's draft is supposed to be better, so it kind of would be in their best interest to go under 20 wins. Cooper Flag is supposed to be coming out. I mean, there's just a lot of guys watching that McDonald's on American, and then American game, and then this year was, a lot of people were saying, a lot of former GMs and GMs now are saying this was the worst draft, or there's just no talent. But then again, you look at some of these GMs that have made terrible draft picks, drafting guys like, Anthony Bennett, number 1, and Hasheem Thabeet at number 2. I mean, you can just look at all the picks that have gone wrong in the last couple of years. So, just because GMs say this is a bad draft doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a bad draft. It may be a lesser talented draft than it was last year coming up, but you can always find some talent somewhere. It just depends on the development system. But to answer the question, I would say below 20 wins. And then for me, getting 20 wins is not an accomplishment. It's just not. That's not something you don't get a banner for not making the playoffs or the play-in or getting the top lottery pick. So yeah, it's just not an accomplishment for me. And so it's not an accomplishment. And then the second question: who's going to be back next year?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're looking at the free agency. I should have pulled this up beforehand. But just looking at the free agency, and I know I know either me, I know this probably is my last week here, guys. I know I already let you guys know that. Just give you guys a heads up that this most likely is my last week on the Locked On Network. It's been a pleasure working with Brandon and having a good time with you guys in the comments and the chat section for sure. I've enjoyed my time for sure. Tyus Jones sign and trade most likely, or he may just walk. Yeah. Anthony Gill's a free agent. And then as far as like Kyle Kuzma being here, we'll see if he gets traded. So I'll just quickly go through. I'm not gonna make a long answer because I know I've been talking so much already. But Tyus Jones, I think they should make a move with him. He's hasn't even played the last couple of games. Kyle Kuzma, I think he'll be back. Jordan Poole, I would keep him because he's playing with the point guard position. Bagley, you have no choice. You don't have any bigs, so I would keep him. He's played really well. Rashawn Holmes, might as well keep him too.
Yeah,
it's just depending on what you do in the draft. And then obviously all the young guys are going to be back. Like Bilal's going to be back. Danny's going to be back. And then Johnny's a question mark. What do you do with Johnny? Are you going to trade him? He had a good game against the Timberwolves. Maybe you do see what you can kind of do with him next year. I mean, if they move on from him, I'm not against that at all. We've talked about that multiple times this year. Those are some of the free agents. And then of course Corey Kitchen's going to be back. Pat Baldwin's going to be back. Vucevic is going to be back. Eugene's going to be back. Justin Champagnie most is going to be back. Landry Shamet will move on from him. Excuse me. And then that's really about it right there. Jared Butler's going to be back, of course, because they re-signed him. That's really about it that I see. Just looking at the Anthony Gill, I already talked about him. I mean, if they decide, I actually don't mind bringing him back. He's played really well these last couple games, and you always got to have your Udonis Haslem or your veteran guy on the bench like we had with Taj Gibson that last year. So I don't mind Gill coming back. I don't.
Yeah, I mean, let me start by saying, man, you already know, man, it's been a definite pleasure, man.
Mm-hmm.
This is your last week, man. It's been all love, man. Owe a lot to you, man. You're my boy. So look, man, appreciate it, man.
Definitely.
But I got 4 days left. So I got 4 days to try to turn this thing around real quick. So I've been looking at over and under 20 wins. I like, it's bad that we're in this position that we're doing that, but Right now, I'm gonna say under. I think that it's not gonna be much different next year as opposed to now. You're not gonna see much roster turnover. Most of the guys are gonna be on the roster because looking at the roster, Jordan Poole's obviously gonna be here. He's got 3 years left. Kyle's gonna be here. He's got 3 years left. Tyus is probably gone. You could try to do a sign and trade, but he might most likely gone. Yeah, Martin Bagley on the 12.5, so it's an expiring contract, so it is movable, especially with him building his value, showing what he can do in DC. Rashawn Holmes, 12.8 player option, 30 years old. He's probably going to take that. Shaman non-guaranteed. Bilal's going to be here. Denny's going to be here. Johnny, we'll see. Corey Kisper. So, you're pretty much not going to see a lot of turnover. Anthony Gill, I will definitely bring him back because, like I said, the best example is Udonis Haslam. And, he's definitely been that veteran guy off the bench. And, from observation, watching him, he's great for this team, man. He really is as far as being that unsung leader that a lot of people don't talk about. If you look at his interactions with his team, man, he's definitely been a big leader on the bench for us. So I would definitely bring Anthony Gill back, man. Plus, he's shown that he can provide quality minutes, man. But yeah, most of the team's going to be back. Most of your core is going to be as far as your young core. Kyle Kuzma, hate him or love him. I think that, overall, he does have his pros and cons, but leadership, being that source of points, I think he's good for a rebuild. And if you look at his contract, man, it keeps going down. Next year's 23, and it goes to 21 to 19. So definitely tradable, but you could keep them too. It's not really a deal you have to make. And then looking at the draft, you hit it. This is a highly developmental draft, so saying that you can pick up a guy at the 4, and you don't necessarily have to plug him in right away. You got Kyle Kuzma there, you got Denny right there who can play the 4, so you can still go out there and get best player available, even if it's Alex Sarr. Because a lot of people forget that most scouts are projecting Alex Sarr to be a power forward, not so much a 5. So if you let him develop on the bench behind Kyle Kuzma. So we have a lot of flexibility. Like I said, a lot of flexibility going forward, which is, we couldn't say that 2 years ago. So I think that's the biggest thing about this team is that, one, you're not going to see a big rotation of players. A lot of these guys are still going to be back. So that's good for a chemistry standpoint. And 2, we have flexibility. It's kind of like football, man. Number 2 in that draft, man, we have a lot of flexibility. They get that quarterback advantage, man. So with the Wizards, you have the opportunity with 2 first-rounders, go out there and find a couple guys who have a high upside, but there's no necessarily a need for them to come right away and start. You will have that foundation already. So, I think it's a win-win. I think that the work is definitely cut out for this new front office, man. But again, we have a front office, man, where there are finally some adults in the room. So, I'm very intrigued with the future, man. So we're going to go ahead and roll. Before we roll, E, you got anything else we cover real quick before we roll?
No, just about you liking Juwan Howard. Yeah, he would definitely bring some energy and some fire, and he's not afraid to slap anybody or get somebody in the check for sure. So he definitely would bring some leadership to the locker room. The only thing is that some of his last couple seasons in Michigan didn't end well. That's the reason why they parted ways or that he was let go. So there are some concerns about the last couple of years. But the second year he was there, he got Coach of the Year. Our Big Ten Coach of the Year, they made it to the Elite 8 and the Final 4. So he's done some good things. He's done some. It was a roller coaster ride at Michigan for sure. So there's some concerns about him, but maybe he will get an interview. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see, man. Like I said, we are in a position where we have a lot of flexibility and a lot of hard decisions are coming up, man. But you can definitely see the light in the tunnel for the Washington Wizards. So we're gonna go ahead and roll, everybody. Definitely appreciate everybody tuning in. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now is also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. All On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts at Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. So everybody, again, appreciate you guys, and we will see you tomorrow. I'll answer more questions for you. And, of course, Friday night, me and my guy E will be down there at Cap 1 for the final home game versus the Chicago Bulls. So definitely tune in and definitely monitor Twitter, man, because, man, we be asking them hard questions, man, talking about my man E over here. So definitely tune in on Twitter, man. So, again, Sunday is the last game of the year. So, look, everybody, we got 4 days. So definitely do our due diligence, try to get our man E to stay, man. But again, man, before we roll, man, much love, E, man. Like I said, this year went by too quick, man. It really did. But appreciate you, E. You're a big reason why we've had success in this channel, man. You bring me on, man. I'm a very, very appreciative. You've done a lot for me. I don't go through the successes that I have without you. So it's all attributed to you, man. Not only did I gain a co-host, a dope co-host, man, but I gained a friend. So it's all love, man. Appreciate you. I really, really do, man. So like I said, definitely appreciate you guys. And we will see you tomorrow. So hail to the Wizards and peace. See you guys tomorrow.